One story that we have followed over the course of the week is Chad Wheeler, who spent some time with the Seattle Seahawks this year, ended up playing a pretty significant role at one point after injuries to the right tackles in front of him. Chad Wheeler was arrested on Monday on suspicion of domestic violence, and subsequent to that, pictures came out, and the full account and police report painted an incredibly horrific picture of someone who he assaulted his partner, at one point choked her until she passed out, then, according to her text message, was eating dinner and expressed surprise that she was not dead. He was subsequently arrested, not just on the domestic violence charge, but also on resisting arrest. He was waived officially yesterday by the Seattle Seahawks. He also released a statement. I think I'd just like to read the statement here. It was posted on Twitter. I think it was also distributed to reporters. But here's from Chad Wheeler. Events happened over the weekend that transpired from a manic episode. I am deeply sorry for the pain and suffering that I have caused to Aaliyah and her family. I apologize profusely for the turmoil that I have caused to my family, teammates, fans, and those closest to me. The most important thing right now is that Aaliyah gets the care she needs and I get help. Both are happening. It is time for me to walk away from football and get the help I need to never again pose a threat to another. I cannot express my sorrow or remorse enough. I am truly ashamed. And people are going to have... There's no... The incident itself, to me, doesn't require much explanation. And the fact that he won't be back with the Seahawks, the question of his NFL career, I find myself thinking about the victim, Paul, and what is best for her to provide the care she needs and to make sure that she's safe and secure. And it's obviously something that is horrific, and it's stomach-turning to anybody who's seen it.
The victim is the priority here. It should be, but the big problem that happens after something like this, even when you see an apology like that, which seems contrite, guy acknowledging his mental illness, but still doing what he did and actively, from the sound of things, stopping taking his medication to help prevent possible manic episodes from happening. This is a guy who's a massive human being who has to be, I think, more self-aware than that. I am with you in that. I wish it was as simple as just, hey, what's best for the victim?
Mm-hmm.
But there also, I think, needs to be a prioritization as far as the punishment for something like this that happens, because it's unacceptable, it's wrong, and I think far too often the NFL, which is not a arm of the law, will slap a player like this on the wrist and make it seem like it's okay and give these guys the opportunity to continue to earn a six-figure plus salary to play a game for a living. It doesn't sit well with me. And whether it's Ben Roethlisberger or Tyreek Hill, and there's a long list of other guys, I just wanted to include those two names because sometimes this does turn into a conversation about race. It shouldn't. This is just unacceptable behavior, and the NFL is still rather cavalier about this. I don't think there's any coming back from this. As a human.
Well, yeah, it's always going to be there. Like, the fact that this happened, regardless of why it happened, and whether he was, and according to the police report, had stopped taking medication for a bipolar disorder, like, none of that changes the actual act that occurred. I think when I look at these, I try to think, what's the most important thing? The most important thing for me is that the victim in this case not be abused, be put in a position to be abused like that again. And the second most important thing is to make sure that the abuser doesn't victimize someone else. Like, those are the two priorities. The part about the football punishment, and I guess this is my initial reaction because there is a widespread consensus of, hey, he should never play football again. The idea of him not playing football again, I don't think that's like, oh, that sounds like a little rash or unjust. Maybe that's the right thing. I feel that all of that energy that gets wound up in that is more about us feeling righteous more about us feeling like this is unacceptable and intolerable and I'll never have, and we're just going to get him out of the way. Because the reality is, Chad Wheeler probably won't ever play in the NFL again. He's not a good enough player for someone to make the evaluation that, hey, he's gotten everything fixed and he's going to be a starting player. He's not Tyreek Hill. And I say Tyreek Hill because that was someone who came into the league with a significant incident. Look, he was accused of having abused his pregnant girlfriend. Was drafted after that had happened, after he pleaded guilty to that. He's subsequently had accusations of child abuse against him, which he's not been disciplined for because it wasn't proven. And I'm not going to tell you that it was wrong that he wasn't disciplined, because I think that what passes that threshold. But it's very convenient for the NFL to make a shining example of someone like Chad Wheeler and then leave the case of Tyreek Hill cloaked in, hey, it wasn't provable, so we can't discipline him.
100%. And I agree with you on both the points you just made there, because there is an element of us saying this to feel better about ourselves. We live in the age of everyone wants to feel as if they are morally superior to others, and they love to brag about that online. You're totally right on that front. But you mentioned with Hill, and that's what drives me crazy about it, is that double standard. And there's a tricky element, and you outlined this in our show prep. If you are to punish somebody that's an athlete like this in a very severe manner, what happens next for the victim? Because that's not the end of the story. And that is a really tricky question to answer. There is a part of me that at the very least thinks that if the NFL decides that for guys like this, they're just going to pull the plug entirely, they're going to make it a lot more difficult for that person to be able to escape justice. And look, there's a lot of, things that you have to connect to get from point A to point B, as far as a guy getting suspended to potentially actually seeing some jail time or a real punishment in the real world after the fact. But there is a strong part of me that believes, because of the way that our legal system is set up, if you got money, you're going to find yourself in a great situation. Usually the side in a case that has more money is going to be able to beat the other. And I feel like pulling the plug from that player's ability to earn money to do that for himself, maybe it leads to justice off the field. Maybe.
And I agree with you about the point that in the past, the legal system has been used to shield the accused, that the person who is the abuser, and that is something that's absolutely wrong. I will say this, that again, my priority, or the person that I feel for most in this situation, is clearly Aaliyah, and hoping that she gets the care. And it's just words from Chad Wheeler, but I do want to say too that, hey, he acknowledged responsibility publicly, and we'll see if that matters in the long term, because it's ultimately like him never holding to that and never doing that again. But I don't want to knock it and say, hey, that's just him saying he acknowledged responsibility.
I don't want to give him credit for it, but that's more than a lot of players have ever done.
That's a good way to put it. I don't want to say, hey, this shows he understands, because it's just words. But it certainly is an indication that he understands the severity of the crime.